Welcome to Shadowlands Ghosts, the place where the lines between reality and the unknown blur. I'm your host, Raven Blackwood, and I'm glad you're joining me on this journey into the heart of darkness. You know, I've always been fascinated by the mysteries of the universe, the things that lie just beyond the edge of our understanding. And I've found that the best way to explore those mysteries is through the stories that have been passed down through the ages. Stories of the supernatural, the paranormal, and the unexplained. As we sit here in the dimly lit room, surrounded by the shadows that dance upon the walls, I have to wonder, what secrets are hidden in the darkness? What lies are waiting to be uncovered? And what truths are too terrifying to be spoken aloud? Tonight, we're going to explore one such story, a tale of a person who stumbled upon a vintage board game that seemed innocent enough, but turned out to be a harbinger of doom. They say that this game can predict the future with chilling accuracy, but at what cost? As you listen to this tale, I want you to imagine that you're right there with the protagonist, experiencing every twist and turn, every shock and every terror. Because, you see, this story isn't just about the events that unfold. It's about the person who's living through them. And as we delve deeper into the heart of the story, I want you to ask yourself, would you be brave enough to face what's coming? Would you be able to survive the horrors that await? So, if you're ready to join me on this journey into the unknown, if you're ready to face your fears and confront the darkness head on, then subscribe to Shadowlands Ghosts and become a part of our family. Because, in the end, it's not just about the story. It's about the journey we take together into the very heart of the Shadowlands. And now, let's begin our tale, as told by the person who lived through it. I've always been drawn to old antique shops. There's something about the musty smell and the way the sunlight filters through the dusty windows that makes me feel like I've stumbled upon a hidden world. It's as if the past and present collide in these cramped, cluttered spaces, and I never know what secrets I might uncover. My name is Emily, and I've spent countless afternoons browsing through these shops, searching for that one unique find that will make my collection stand out. As I pushed open the creaky door of the old shop on Main Street, a bell above the entrance let out a faint jingle, and the proprietor, an elderly man with kind eyes, looked up from behind the counter. "Welcome to Curios and Wonders," he said with a warm smile. "I'm George. Is there something specific you're looking for, or are you just browsing?" I smiled back and wandered deeper into the shop, my eyes scanning the shelves for anything that caught my attention. The store was a treasure trove of oddities and relics, each one telling a story of its own. I ran my fingers over the spines of old books, the intricate carvings on an antique music box, and the delicate patterns on a vintage vase. But it was a small, unassuming box in the corner of the shelf that caught my eye. It was old, the edges worn, and the surface scratched, but there was something about it that drew me in. "Ah, you found the old game," George said, noticing my interest. "That's a rare one. It's called Destiny's Path. I'm not sure where it came from or how it ended up here, but it's been in the shop for years." I picked up the box, feeling an inexplicable connection to it. The cover was a deep, rich wood, and the lid was adorned with strange symbols that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. As I opened the box, a faint scent of sandalwood wafted out, and I saw that the game was still intact, the board and pieces nestled in their original compartments. "It's a fortune-telling game, I think," George said, his voice low and mysterious. "But I've never been able to figure out how it works. Some people say it's cursed, that it can predict the future with chilling accuracy. But I think that's just old wives' tales." I laughed, feeling a shiver run down my spine. "I'll take it," I said, handing George the money. As I left the shop, the game clutched tightly in my hand. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had just made a terrible mistake. But I pushed the thought aside, telling myself I was just being silly. After all, it was just a game. As I walked home, the game clutched tightly in my hand. The faint scent of sandalwood wafted up, transporting me to another time and place. I couldn't explain the strange connection I felt to the game, but I couldn't deny it either. The symbols etched onto the lid seemed to shimmer in my mind, and I felt an inexplicable urge to play the game as soon as I got home. When I arrived at my apartment, I set the game on the coffee table and made myself a cup of tea, trying to shake off the feeling of unease that had settled in the pit of my stomach. As I waited for the tea to steep, I found myself glancing at the game, my mind wandering to the stories George had told me about its supposed curse. I laughed to myself, trying to dismiss the notion as mere superstition. But as I sat down on the couch, my eyes drifted back to the game, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. The symbols on the lid seemed to be staring back at me, their meaning just out of reach. As the evening wore on, I found myself becoming more and more restless. I tried to distract myself by watching TV, but my mind kept wandering back to the game. Finally, I got up and decided to set it up, telling myself that I just wanted to see how it worked. As I carefully removed the pieces from their compartments, I noticed that the air in the room seemed to grow colder. I felt a faint draft brush against my skin, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself it was just the wind outside, but the sensation only grew stronger. I set the game board on the coffee table and began to read the instructions, my heart pounding in my chest. The rules were cryptic, but I managed to decipher them, and soon I was ready to make my first move. As I placed the first piece on the board, a loud creak echoed through the room, making me jump. I looked around, trying to see what had caused the noise, but everything seemed normal. I took a deep breath and continued playing, my hands shaking slightly as I made each move. The game seemed to come alive in my hands, the pieces moving of their own accord. I felt a strange energy building up inside me, and the symbols on the lid seemed to be glowing with an otherworldly light. Suddenly, the lights in the room began to flicker, and I felt a chill run down my spine. I tried to stop playing, but my hands seemed to be moving of their own accord, as if some unseen force was guiding me. The game was drawing me in, pulling me deeper and deeper into its dark, mysterious world. I felt like I was losing control, and I didn't know how to stop. As the lights continued to flicker, I realized that I might have made a terrible mistake by playing the game. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, everything went black. The lights went out, and the room was plunged into darkness. I was left sitting in silence, the game still clutched in my hand, my heart pounding in my chest. As I sat there, waiting for my eyes to adjust to the darkness, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was not alone in the room. I felt like something was watching me, waiting for me to make my next move. The game had started, and I had no idea what lay ahead. As I sat there, my heart still racing from the sudden darkness, I realized that the feeling of being watched was not just my imagination. The air in the room seemed to vibrate with an eerie, malevolent presence, and I could sense that the game had unleashed something sinister. The symbols on the lid seemed to be pulsing with a dark energy, and I could feel it seeping into my skin, infecting me with its malevolent power. I tried to shake off the feeling, telling myself that it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But as I waited for my eyes to adjust to the darkness, I started to make out shapes around me. At first, they were just faint outlines, but as my eyes adjusted, I saw that they were the pieces from the game, arranged in a pattern on the coffee table. But it was not just the pieces that I saw. I saw a figure standing in the corner of the room, its presence seeming to grow more solid with each passing moment. The figure was shrouded in shadows, but I could sense its malevolent gaze upon me. I tried to scream, but my voice was frozen in my throat. The figure began to move closer, its presence filling the room with an unspeakable horror. I felt my mind reeling, trying to comprehend the true nature of the game. It was not just a simple board game, but a portal to a dark and malevolent realm. The symbols on the lid were not just random markings, but a key to unlock the gates of hell. As the figure loomed over me, its presence suffocating me with fear, I realized that I had unleashed a horror beyond my wildest imagination. The game was not just a game, but a doorway to a realm of unspeakable terror. And I was trapped, unable to escape the horrors that I had unleashed. The darkness seemed to coalesce around me, and I felt myself being pulled into the game. I was no longer just a player, but a pawn in a twisted game of survival. The figure reached out a shadowy hand, and I felt myself being drawn into its grasp. And then everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the floor, the game still clutched in my hand. The room was silent, the only sound the faint hum of the TV in the background. But I knew that I was not alone. The figure was still out there, waiting for me to make my next move. The game had started, and I was trapped in its web of horror. I knew that I had to escape, but I had no idea how. The symbols on the lid seemed to be mocking me, their malevolent power coursing through my veins. I was at the mercy of the game, and I knew that I might never escape its clutches. As I lay there, my mind reeling with fear, I knew that I had to find a way to stop the game. But as I looked at the symbols on the lid, I realized that it might already be too late. The game had me in its grasp, and I was doomed to play out its twisted scenario to the very end. As I struggled to my feet, my eyes locked onto the game, still clutched in my trembling hand. The symbols on the lid seemed to be pulsing with an otherworldly energy, drawing me in with an unholy allure. I knew that I had to destroy the game, to break the hold it had on me, but as I raised my hand to fling it across the room, I felt a presence behind me. The air seemed to chill, the shadows deepening and twisting into grotesque forms. I spun around, my heart racing with fear, and that was when I saw it. The figure, the same one I had seen in the darkness, was standing behind me, its presence filling the room with an unspeakable horror. Its eyes, black as coal, seemed to bore into my soul, and I felt my mind reeling with terror. The figure reached out a shadowy hand, its fingers closing around my wrist like a vice. I tried to scream, but my voice was frozen in my throat. The figure began to pull me towards it, its grip like a cold, dead weight. I tried to resist, but my body seemed to be moving of its own accord. The symbols on the lid of the game seemed to be growing brighter, pulsing with an energy that was drawing me closer and closer to the abyss. As I was pulled towards the figure, I saw that its face was a twisted mockery of humanity, its features distorted into a grotesque parody of a smile. Its eyes, those black, soulless eyes, seemed to be burning with an inner fire, a fire that was consuming me from the inside out. I felt my mind slipping, my grip on reality tenuous at best. The figure was pulling me into a realm of madness, a realm where the laws of reality no longer applied. I was trapped in a living nightmare, with no escape in sight. The figure's grip tightened, its fingers closing around my wrist like a vice. I felt my bones cracking, my skin tearing, as I was pulled closer and closer to the abyss. The symbols on the lid of the game were blazing with an intense, malevolent energy, and I knew that I was doomed. As the figure pulled me closer, its mouth opened, revealing a void of darkness that seemed to stretch on forever. I felt myself being drawn into that void, consumed by the very horror that I had unleashed. The last thing I saw was the game, still clutched in my hand, its symbols pulsing with an otherworldly energy. And then everything went black. When I came to, I was lying on the floor, the game still clutched in my hand. The room was silent, the only sound the faint hum of the TV in the background. But I knew that I was not alone. The figure was still out there, waiting for me to make my next move. The game had started, and I was trapped in its web of horror. I knew that I had to escape, but I had no idea how. The symbols on the lid seemed to be mocking me, their malevolent power coursing through my veins. I was at the mercy of the game, and I knew that I might never escape its clutches. But I knew that I had to try. I had to find a way to stop the game, to break its hold on me. I had to destroy it, no matter the cost. The game was a portal to a realm of unspeakable terror, and I was determined to close it, no matter what horrors lay in wait. As I stood up, my eyes fixed on the game, I knew that I had to destroy it once and for all. The symbols on the lid seemed to be pulsing with an otherworldly energy, but I steeled myself for the task ahead. I walked over to the fireplace, the game clutched in my hand, and tossed it into the flames. But as the fire consumed the game, I felt a sense of unease. The flames seemed to dance and twist, as if they were being manipulated by an unseen force. I felt a presence behind me, and I spun around, but there was no one there. I turned back to the fire, and that was when I saw it. The symbols on the game were being etched into the walls, the floor, and the ceiling. They seemed to be spreading, infecting everything around me. I knew then that I was too late. The game had already won. I felt a cold, dead weight settle over me, and I knew that I was trapped. The figure was still out there, waiting for me to make my next move. I was a pawn in its game, and I had no idea how to escape. As I stood there, frozen in terror, the symbols on the walls began to pulse with an otherworldly energy. I felt myself being drawn into their power, consumed by the very horror that I had unleashed. And then everything went black. But when I came to, I was not alone. The figure was standing in front of me, its eyes blazing with an inner fire. I knew then that I was doomed. The game had started, and I was trapped in its web of horror. The figure began to speak, its voice low and menacing. "You should not have played the game," it said. "Now, you will never escape." As the figure reached out to claim me, I realized that I had made a terrible mistake. I had unleashed a horror beyond my wildest imagination, and now I was paying the price. The last thing I saw was the figure's twisted face, its eyes burning with an inner fire. And then everything went black. But the darkness was not absolute. I could feel the presence of the figure, still out there, waiting for me to make my next move. I was trapped in a living nightmare, and I had no idea how to escape. The game had won, and I was its prisoner. I was doomed to play its twisted game, forever trapped in a realm of unspeakable terror. And as I lay there, frozen in fear, I knew that I would never be free. The game was still out there, waiting for its next victim. And I was just a pawn in its twisted game of horror. Epilogue. The house on the hill stood empty for years, a testament to the horrors that had taken place within its walls. The fireplace was cold and dark, the ashes of the game long since swept away. But the symbols remained, etched into the walls, the floor, and the ceiling, a reminder of the terror that had been unleashed. People whispered of the game, a cursed artifact that had driven its players to madness and despair. They spoke of the figure, a malevolent entity that haunted the dreams of those who had dared to play. But the truth was far more sinister. The game was not just a simple toy, a distraction from the mundane routines of life. It was a doorway, a portal to a realm of unspeakable terror, a place where the very fabric of reality was twisted and distorted. And I was its prisoner, trapped in a living nightmare from which I could not awaken. The figure still visited me, its eyes blazing with an inner fire as it whispered twisted secrets in my ear. I was its plaything, a pawn in its game of horror, and I knew that I would never be free. But there was something more, something that the figure did not know. As I lay in the darkness, I began to realize that I was not alone. There were others, trapped in their own living nightmares, their minds shattered by the horrors that they had witnessed. And I knew that I had to find them. I had to find a way to escape, to break free from the game's twisted grasp and shatter the chains that bound me. I had to find a way to stop the figure, to banish it back to the depths of hell from which it had come. But until then, I was trapped, a prisoner of the game, forever doomed to play its twisted game of horror. And as I lay there, frozen in fear, I knew that I would never be free. The game was still out there, waiting for its next victim, its next pawn in the twisted game of horror. And I was just a reminder, a warning to those who would dare to play. Do not play the game. For once you start, you will never stop. Thank you for watching this chilling tale unfold. I hope it left you with a lasting sense of unease and a healthy dose of fear. But as the darkness fades, I want to express my deepest gratitude for your time and attention. This story was crafted with care and dedication, and I'm thrilled that you were able to experience it with me. As we close this chapter, I want to ask you, are you ready to dive into more thrilling adventures and unsettling stories? If so, I invite you to subscribe to our channel for a constant stream of captivating content. Our community is built on a shared passion for the unknown, the unexplained, and the just plain terrifying. By subscribing, you'll gain access to exclusive content, behind-the-scenes insights, and early updates on our latest projects. You'll become part of a community that shares your interests and passions. And of course, you'll be supporting the creation of more stories like this one, carefully crafted to keep you on the edge of your seat. So, don't wait. Click that subscribe button now and join the journey into the unknown. Let's explore the darker corners of the human experience together, and may the thrill of the unknown be your constant companion. And remember, some games are better left unplayed. But the game of discovery, the game of exploration, and the game of pushing the boundaries of human knowledge, those are games worth playing. So, subscribe now, and let's begin a new adventure together. Hit that subscribe button, and let the next chapter begin.